It's 2023. The Steam Spring Sale is upon us. Cyberpunk is half off, a game that you heard was terrible on release. But it's been years. Before you purchase it, you ask yourself, is it any good? This spoiler free review is going to try to answer that question for you so you'll know if you want to spend your hard earned money on this 2.5-year-old game. To answer this, I'm going to break down this game into 3 sections: 1, the world; 2, the player; 3, the story. Each section will have subsections where I will cover everything that I want to review in this game. Let's get right into it. Section 1, the world. Here's the good. The world is truly alive. Everywhere you go in this game, the world is doing something. Citizens of Night City are going about their days. Crimes are being committed around the clock. The sounds of the city are as close to what a real-life city would sound like in so many ways. Compared to the towns and cities in their previous titles, CD Projekt Red outdid themselves, making the city feel alive and busy with the lives of those who live there. The graphics are amazing. From normal path to path ray tracing, the city looks beautiful no matter where you are. With a powerful PC or the newest generation of consoles, the game will look amazing as long as you can run it. The map is extremely large, with vehicles and fast travel points. Getting from one side of Night City to the other is a breeze. For a city, there's a wide variety of places you can go and see, from Japantown to the desert area surrounding the city. And if you just take a moment of your time, you can see how beautiful the world around you is. But here's the bad. The citizens of Night City are very poorly designed, unfortunately, especially the children. There are only a few variations of people that walk around, and after playing it for a while, you will start to see what I'm talking about. The children look like adult models shrunk down to child size. So many of their proportions are out of whack, as well as what they do. And if you look closely, you can find the adult models that were shrunk down into children. At first glance, it looks like everyone is walking around doing their own thing. But following close to the NPCs of the game, unless they are part of a quest, they really don't do much but add to the atmosphere or run away from you if you pull out your gun on accident. The streetlights and cars of the game are interesting. Sometimes they will drive well and work with you as you're driving around. Most of the time, they will just honk and get in your way and not drive very lifelike. It pales into comparison to a game that came out nearly 10 years ago in the form of GTA 5. The streetlights always change to green as you approach. Gameplay wise, this helps out a lot, but it takes away from the immersion of the game. And here's the ugly. The pure amount of glitches in this game amazes me. This has to be one of the most bug and glitch filled games I have ever played, and I've played Bethesda games. To be fair, most of them were small bugs, very minor to the overall enjoyment of the game. What it really does is it greatly destroys the immersion of the game and sours the experience after some time. From everything related to cars and the way they function, to bosses T-posing at me, to stealth in the game, there are just too many things that are bugged. With over 2 years of development time in the game post-release, you would think that most of these bugs would be figured out. But alas, while I was playing the game, I tried to forgive the game for being so buggy. Oh, it's just a bug here, a glitch here. I'll just restart my game and it'll go away. But that shouldn't be an issue. And when you can't go a few minutes without something bugging out, it just ruins the experience over a long period of time. Don't ever drive off-road in a car or a bike. It's nearly impossible as your car flies all over the place. The stealth in the game is horrendous. If you slightly bump into something or walk over something on the ground, it will just take you out of stealth for a brief moment. Sometimes this will alert those near you, and other times it won't. Stealth, when you have an NPC with you, is goofy at best and just terrible at worst, like you're being a babysitter. And finally, with a great bustling city that is always alive brings the cost of a powerful system to run the game. If you have a low budget system from several years ago, you might want to wait a bit longer to play the game if you want to run anything higher than 1080p 60 FPS. Section 2, the player. Here's the good. V is the main character of this game, and you will be playing for the majority of the game. The character customization is vast, and if you are skilled with the editor, it allows you to make V whatever you want. With mods, you can go even further, but the customization in the base game is still good for its time. And if you're somebody like me and just click through the base options that look the best and get to the game as fast as possible, it still works out that way. The RPG aspect of the game is alive and well, with even more ways to improve your character over The Witcher 3. The sheer RPG elements in this game are truly amazing. The vast variety of ways you can play the game gives way to multiple playthroughs without having it become boring because of gameplay. The inclusion of Johnny Silverhand as your companion throughout the game was a great inclusion to portray the story to the player. The way the two interact throughout the game is really interesting and on a level not seen in many titles throughout the years. The gunplay in the game is really good for an RPG, way better than that of similar titles like Fallout. The variety of guns you can use, especially as you get into the legendary weapons later in the game, are diverse and fun. Finding a favorite weapon will only be hard because there are so many to choose from. The quick hacking and hacking in the game are interesting, and once you get used to it, can be very powerful tools as you explore the world around you. The movement in the game is great and can help you a lot while in combat. In the late game, with all your enhancements, you will have too many tools to work with. But here's the bad. V is boring. Coming from a franchise that had so much lore and interesting characters as the Witcher series, it was unfortunate to see the main character of this series had to offer. The male voice actor for V was not the best, but not as bad as I had heard other people say about him. I expected way more from Johnny in these terms. Keanu Reeves is not my favorite voice actor. In his other works, in his other movies, he has done a lot better than what he has done with this character. With these two characters, I went in with too high of an expectation and was let down. The dialogue options often say something that I had no clue it would say. I understand that I don't want V to say yes to every situation, but some of the ways V answers questions and responds to people is just completely different than the dialogue options suggest. Many times, just being rude and mean when you would think it was just a neutral option or just plain stupid responses. The clothing options are really bad in my opinion. Until you get to the late game, they really don't do much stat-wise, and you will just equip bras that have higher armor than your previous gear. Here's the ugly. The character models just widely vary in quality. 1 second, Johnny is super detailed and looks great. Other times, it's like they used a different model and he just looks terrible. You can't even recognize him. The same thing with V. 1 second, he looks great, and the next thing you know, he looks terrible. The hair in the game typically just looks very bad unless it's on the main character during a cutscene. This doesn't really make sense to me. Shouldn't it just be the same character model? Is this because I was playing on path ray tracing? I don't know. But it was insane to see the models change quality throughout the game. Johnny is definitely the worst when it comes to this. Sometimes I couldn't recognize him when I would see him in the open world or on a side quest. Also, I don't know if it was just me, but when I would go to customize my character with enhancements at the Ripper Dock, my frames would tank to like 1 or 2 frames per second. This made me never want to enhance my character at all, and I would just go without any chrome on. And I figured it was likely due to my ray tracing in the game. And if you pick up the game, when you see your buddy at the beginning of the game, I want you to look at his face, see how detailed he is, then look at the rest of his body. You'll see what I mean. Section 3. Story. Let's get into the good. For a new IP, it's good. I really like how there are 3 different ways you can start the story in this game. I personally chose the street kid, but I'm sure that the other 2 is just as good. Eventually, this is not a spoiler, they all have to meet up somewhere to end up getting Johnny. But the way they did it was really good in my opinion. It offers more replayability to the game, even if it's just to play a different start to the same overall story of the game. The amount of endings was good as well, and expected. The Witcher 3 had a variety of endings depending on what you did throughout the game, and this game is very similar. From what I can tell, it all comes down to one decision you make in the game and instead of many throughout. But at least this means you can reload to that one point instead of having to have multiple saves to play different endings. The quests throughout the game are varied and all interesting, especially the companion characters that you can interact with and who have their own storylines. Some even interact differently with you depending on how you started the game and what gender you made V. The main story itself is interesting, not how I really expected it to go, and sometimes a little drawn out here and there, but overall, still good. Of course, compared to a fully realized IP like The Witcher, that's had years and several games to become what it is today, the story just doesn't hold up. But it doesn't mean it's bad, it's actually good. Here's the bad though. The main story isn't really long. Just like many RPGs these days, if you were just to go right through with the story, it would only take maybe 10 hours to get through the whole thing if you knew what you were doing. It also prevents you from doing the main story until you reach a certain level. I understand why they would make you do this, but at the same time, if I want to go do the final boss at level 4, I should be able to do that and suffer through it. I would prefer that more of your decisions throughout the game would affect what happened at the end instead of just choosing one option at the end of the game to get your outcome. In The Witcher 3, there are several points in the game where you can trace back that determines what ending you received. But in this one, not so much. It could be both a good thing and a bad thing if you think about it. Here's the ugly about the story. If I don't want to do the final mission of the game, please, for the love of God, let me unselect it in the quest selection. You always have to have a quest selected. I know this is more of a gameplay issue for me, but it has to do with the story as well. Once you finish the story, you can't really continue from where you left off. You can't do any more quests, and you can only essentially run around. If you want to do anything else, you need to go back from your decision and play the game from there. At a bare minimum, it tells you that this is the final section of the game, without really saying that. But I think you should be able to do some other things after you finish. I understand why they would do it, but this is a modern AAA title. It should strive to be better and innovate. My final thoughts on the game. Overall, I was disappointed with this game. This was one of my most hyped games ever. I pre-ordered it to major disappointment and gave it a second chance a few years later. Don't get me wrong, it was a fun game, and if you can get it on sale, it's a solid play. If you are a story-driven person, the story is doable. You can get a lot out of it, especially if you do a lot of the side quests and fully explore the city around you. If you are a gameplay person, it's servable. The gunplay is very good, with many different ways you can play the game. The replayability, just from the style in which you choose to play the game, is incredible and reminds me a lot of the different styles you could play old Bethesda games. If you are a graphics nut, this game will push your system to the edge to give you the most up-to-date graphics in a AAA title to this day, even almost 3 years after its release. Especially with the recent release of Path Ray Tracing, you can do so much in this game, with the downsides being the impact on your wallet. If you are just looking for a fun game to pass the time, this game will let you get through as many hours as you needed, immersing you in a brand new, colorful world with so many things to do. I personally got my fair share out of the game before picking something else up. In the end, I have to give it a score. I like to score my games out of 100 to not leave any confusion where I place it exactly. With all my positives and my negatives that I laid out throughout this video, you'd think I'd give it a terrible score. But I truly had a lot of fun with this game, but there were too many negatives to give it a 100 or a 90. So I would have to rate this game at an 84 out of 100. Thank you for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe, and leave a comment down below if you agree or disagree with my logic and score of this game. The links to everything you need are down in this description below. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.